Hi, everybody. We're going to get started. So, I'm Scott Wheatley. I'm the Executive Director of the Cloverdale District Chamber of Commerce. And we represent Clayton, Cloverdale, and Campbell Heights. That's sort of the East Surrey section is what our chamber covers. I know there's 2 other chambers in the city. We all have sort of our own little geographic areas that we take care of. I'd also like to acknowledge that we're meeting on traditional territories of the Semiahmoo, Katzie, Kwantlen, Pequot, and Tsawwassen First Nations. And I want to thank everybody for joining us today. I appreciate it. We were originally going to have this on Tuesday evening, but the school board is having a retirement party. And I know everybody loves a retirement party. We have a couple of incumbents here that need to be there as well. So we were able to switch it, and KPU has been a fantastic host, and they've accommodated everything that we've needed to do. Just so you know, we're also doing a council for city council meeting on Thursday evening, and we're going to have the mayors here the following week on the 13th as well, if you'd like to visit for more of those. I would like to introduce, though, for the running for school trustees, we have Marianne Pine here. Oh, this year, sorry. Lisa Alexis, Albert Taraduru, and I apologize if I mispronounced names. Okay, I'll use my outside voice. We have Bob Holmes, Lori Lawson, Sunny Mangat, Jasper Narwhal, who will be here a little bit later, Gary Timotchuk, sorry, and Sean Wilson. Oh, good. Technology. Amazing. I want to introduce our moderator today. It's Malin Jordan. He's the editor of the Cloverdale Reporter. Now, I'd also like to mention that I am recording this. When I get back to the office, I will upload it to YouTube. And for our trustees and for you to know that there will be a much wider audience that we're going to be able to see today's all candidates meeting. And now I'm going to pass it over to Malin.
Thank you, Scott. Thanks for inviting me to do this. This is also the first time I've moderated one of these, so you'll have to bear with me through any difficulties that I may have. The Cloverdale Chamber is a nonpartisan organization. Its role is to ensure that it shares information with its members and provides access to information. All our questions tonight or today were submitted by our members over the last few weeks, and the order of the questions have been randomized. So, want to get started now?
Sure. Just to let you guys know that I have 2 parts. So what we'll do, the first round is we'll give everybody 2 minutes to introduce themselves. After that, when we start the question and answer session, everybody will be asked the same question. And you'll have 1 minute to answer. At 50 seconds, I'll hold up the yellow card, and at 1 minute, there'll be the right card. Hopefully, you know, if it takes you a minute, 2 seconds to finish your sentence, that would be great, because I don't like to cut anybody off. After we're done, then everybody will have a moment or 2 at the end to give closing remarks. And as well, after that, if you have time and the audience would like to meet with you, that would be wonderful as well. Okay, so we're not going to kick this over right away. I think really that's about it, other than getting going.
Okay, let's do it.
Oh yeah, the last thing was, so if Bob starts this round, then the next round will be Gary, and we'll move through on a rotational basis, so everybody has a chance.
Okay, starting with Bob, I'd like to begin the roundtable by asking each candidate to give a brief introduction.
Hi there, my name is Bob Holmes. I've been a school trustee for the last 8 years here in Surrey. In addition to all my roles as a school trustee and committees right here in the city, I've also been very involved with BC School Trustee Association, various committees, and now on the board of directors. And what that provides is an opportunity to bring the provincial perspective back to Surrey, but more importantly for us, it helps me bring the Surrey voice to the provincial level. We learn that many other districts go through the same struggles we do with funding. So we're able to advocate that very directly with the province. And it adds really a larger voice for Surrey at that provincial level. Very proud of the job we've done in the last 8 years. We've been able to make a lot of progress. We've improved student success continuously throughout that time. We've been able to make a lot of progress on the capital crunch. I'm sure you all know we suffer from here in Surrey. Surrey is such a growing city. We were constantly in need of capital, and for many years saw no new schools. But the last 8 years, we made a lot of progress in that regard, and more being made all the time. We've added thousands of seats in the last 4 years, and even before that, many more underway now, and many more to come. We have a capital plan that involves a couple more $1 billion, almost a couple $1 billion over the next several years that we're looking to have funded. We demonstrated strong leadership for COVID. It was a very difficult time, but we were able to follow health mandates, keep our kids in school, and really the Surrey voice was heard loudly throughout the province. Really, other districts looked to Surrey for the leadership we saw here when it came to COVID. Also maintain sound fiscal responsibility. Of course, we have to balance our budgets, but we're able to do so while keeping all the funds that we can in the schools. We have the lowest administration costs in the entire province. I'm very proud of that. So I'd like to ask for you to vote for me, Bob Holmes, Surrey First Education, and the rest of my team. Thank you.
Gary?
Thank you. My name is Gary Timoshuk, and Bob is my colleague on the Surrey First Education team. He certainly covered a lot of points, but I think I've got a couple of extras that I'll throw at you as well. I've been on the board as well for 8 years this time around, and I've got a long history in both business and nonprofit leadership, where I've been able to demonstrate my leadership skills, along with what I've done on the board over the last few years. I've also been on a number of boards, committees, commissions, those types of things, which again demonstrates my ability to work with the team and be able to make progress within that organization. We've had many meetings with our partners. So when I refer to partners, I'm talking about our MLAs, our MPs, City Council, and certainly the Minister of Education, and now Minister of Education and Childcare over the years. And I mention that because that's all about the advocacy role that we play and that we take responsibility for, to try to make sure we get our share of funding, not only for capital for the schools, the many schools that we have been able to build, but the many more that we've got plans for over the coming years. And the other thing I want to mention as well is that we have hired, Bob talked about our fiscal responsibility, and we've always made sure that money goes back into the classroom as much as possible. And over the last 4 years, we have not laid off any staff whatsoever. In fact, we have hired additional teachers, EAs, and support staff in every category across the board over the last 4 years. And I mention that because, of course, that's what builds the school district and makes sure that we've got safe, caring, and inclusive environments for all of our students as well as our staff. So again, my name is Gary Timoshuk, and I'm part of the Surrey First Education team, and I hope we can count on your support again on October.
Thank you. So,
Hi, my name is Sonia Mungit. I'm a sociologist. I'm also an instructor here at Mountain University, and I teach sociology. So I grew up here in Surrey. I went to the Surrey schools. I went to Dr. Abdi Elementary School. The high school I went to is Princess Margaret Secondary School. So I've experienced what it's like to actually grow up in our education system today. I also have a 4-year-old son who will be entering our school system. And the things that I've been seeing, that I've been observing, also hearing from my students, because I teach a lot of the students who graduate from our high schools. And I feel like we need a lot of changes to be made. Now, we also have a board that's been here for the last 8 years, and while they've done a great job, I think there is a lot of room for change and more creative aspects that can be applied to the budget that can actually provide better quality education. All of our students have a right to education, but they also all have the right to quality education, and that's an area that I think that's often. Thank you.
Lisa.
Hi there. Thank you to the Chamber of Commerce and KPU for hosting this event. And thank you, Scott, for the land acknowledgement. As an Indigenous person here in Surrey, I really appreciate that. I'm Métis heritage. My name is Lisa Alexis, and I'm running for school board trustee. I graduated from LA Matheson here in Surrey. I have 3 children, one who's graduated, one who's in high school or Tweedsmuir, and another who is 3 and will be entering the school district in the next couple of years. I work as an operations project manager, and I work in an investment financial industry. And I believe that my experience in business and project management will help be able to create and work with the existing stakeholders and different levels of government to be able to really prepare for the growth that we're experiencing here in Surrey. I think the existing group has done a good job with the resources that we have, but we really have to have a very forward-facing plan, and we need to be planning far into the future right now. I think parents are very concerned about their children's well-being. They're concerned about their safety. They're concerned about portables. They're concerned about class sizes. And these are issues that I heard in 2018 when I ran, and I'm hearing them again now. So I'm hoping that my business experience and will help be able to contribute in those areas. In 2018, I received 19,867 votes as an independent candidate. And that's why I've decided to run again, because I feel like people see that business is required in the Surrey School District.
Thank you. Down there.
You all heard it? So first, good afternoon to everyone. I want to acknowledge the territory as well. We are on the land of the Katzie, the Semiahmoo, and the Kwantlen Nation. And Kwantlen, of course, is named after the Kwantlen Nation. Also want to thank Scott and the Cloverdale and District Chamber of Commerce for organizing this event, Mailing for being our host and facilitator, and also KPU for accommodating and allowing the space for us to be here. So I'm going to talk about who am I and why am I running. So who am I? I am a registered nurse. I have a doctorate in education. I am a faculty here at KPU in the nursing department. I'm also a mother. I am a past PAC president and an immigrant, because I came here when I was 6 years old. I grew up in Vancouver. I moved to Surrey about 32 years ago when I started teaching at KPU. And the reason I'm running is I don't need a job. I already have a really good one and a prof. It's because I've had the community approach me and say, there are a lot of challenges in the school system that need change. Things like drugs and gangs, mental health issues, vaping, or some of the other ones is mental health issues, discrimination, and the list goes on. Like, there are so many challenges within the system. I know the board has been working on it, but really a lot more needs to be done. The issue of lack of resources is huge. The overcrowding. We're getting about 1,600 people moving to Surrey a month. And that's a huge issue in itself in terms of resources. I have lots of experience working in the community, over 30 years. I've worked at all levels of government, and I've worked with over 100 organizations. I sit on multiple boards, and please consider voting for me.
Thank you. Lori?
I've been a resident of Surrey for over 65 years. And currently I've had 5 family members who are teachers in the Surrey system. I have a granddaughter who is a BA and has a child with special needs. I spent my entire school years in Surrey and graduated from Queen Elizabeth Secondary. In my working life, I worked for the city of Surrey for over 27 years and was the union president of the city workers for 15 of those years. This is just a snapshot of why I feel that I am motivated to be a trustee. It is my home, it's where I live, and where my family lives. I feel I have so much experience in dealing with the issues of Surrey students, teachers, and children with special needs. I have volunteered continuously for the Front Room, Protein for Kids, and was a board member of the Surrey Homelessness and Housing Task Force for over 10 years. For 14 years, I have been a member of the Aboriginal Council, and I was part of the Equity Stand. I have had 4 children who have graduated from Surrey. I'm very proud of the fact they went to all different schools, all different types of programs, and just proving that lots of times it's not just academics, it's social and emotional well-being that we need to do to sort of with the whole part of the child And certainly with my children, that was true. They all didn't go the academic route, but Surrey was there to support them. So I'm asking for you to support me and my team, Surrey First Education, October 15th. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Gary King. I've been a trustee with Surrey School Board for the last 8 years. First of all, I would like to thank Cloverdale Chamber of Commerce and KPU for hosting this event. I'm an electronics engineer from back home. I moved to Canada back in 1990. It's about 23 years. Very passionate about students and education system, so that's what made me run in 2014. I'm currently serving as chair for the Learning Liaison Committee, which is a very important committee where we collaborate with different groups, because we know that hearing from the stakeholders and other partner groups is very important. Collaboration is what makes your system strong. So we have very strong working relationship with all 3 levels of the government, and we will continue to advocate for all Surrey students, staff, and parents. So on October 15th, I would request all the voters of Surrey, please vote for Gary Thing and my entire team of Surrey First Education, because the experience does make a huge difference. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean.
Thank you very much. I'm Sean Wilson, and I have 22 years experience as a trustee on the Board of Education in Surrey. My background is from business administration. I retired rather early, and I had a considerable amount of time to do some community work. When I was first elected in the first term, one of the things that became very clear to me that I felt was extraordinarily negative in terms of providing public education to students was the dysfunction, the disrespect that the community had for the board, for the management, and the stakeholders. In fact, it surprised me to such an extent that I focused most of my time in looking at how that could be corrected, and it wasn't going to happen overnight. In the second term, I sought a position of chair of the board and was elected to chair of the board. And with the new superintendent, I focused fully on trying to correct the relationship problem that I saw in the school district with its stakeholders, its teachers, its support staff, principals and vice principals, etc. And it took a long time, playing a part on selection committees to hire new people from inside or outside the district, and also to eliminate some of the people that we felt were causing problems inside the district. And over a period of, really, it took years, several terms that I continued to play a part with and colleagues on the board. And once that collaborative work with the board started to really recognize what it takes to fix that problem, we were able to, over time, with the superintendent and new positions for experienced professional people to correct the problem, and I'm very proud of the work that was done. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll move into the questions. You have 1 minute for your answer. We'll start with Bob. First question is, since learning is negatively affected by students being constantly on their cell phones, will you support a strict no cell phone policy except at lunchtime or in other specific times that other districts have?
I would say absolutely not, and only because that's not what we're hearing from our educators. If we were here from our educators, they would like to see a cell phone ban and give some reasons why that would be the case. I would certainly be willing to look at that. Right now, I think what we see is phones, devices, tablets, laptops have become an essential part of teaching and learning. These are skills our students need to learn going forward when they move out of school into the real world, so to speak, whether it's working, whether it's volunteering, whether it's further education. They're going to need to know how to use those tools effectively. So at this point, there are classes certainly where teachers feel for their class, a phone is not a device they should be using, and they can certainly ask students not to have them. Sometimes they'll boxes and collect them. But other classes, those phones, those devices are very much an integral part of their learning. And we also have ability as a district to help out with funding because, of course, not every student has a device. So it's important to have equity when it comes to that technology.
Thank you, Gary.
Thank you. First off, I'll just mention that I am the chair of the policy committee. And I've been on the board, as previously mentioned, for 8 years. And in that time, I've never once heard anybody, whether it be staff or student or a parent, come forward with a concern like this. The other thing I want to mention is the question says that learning is negatively affected. Yet we've seen over the last 4-year term that the results of our students have actually increased. So there's nothing that suggests to me that we have a significant problem. If in fact somebody came forward officially to the board and or the policy committee to look at this, then certainly I'd want to look at some data, some information that would prove that it's something we need to look at. It's also my understanding that some teachers are having students use their devices for actual work in the class, and so therefore it may actually negatively affect their learning abilities within the class. So at this point in time, I don't see that there is a pressing need for us to look at a policy on this, but it's something that I'm open to, and if there's information available that says we should look at it, we will.
Thank you.
So I would like to actually, I agree with the Gary as well, that we actually are not seeing a negative impact in schools from what I've been hearing and also what I've experienced myself. Cell phones, I know for a lot of people, sometimes we view it negatively, but we also have to teach our children how to appropriately and teach them the skills of when it's appropriate to use their cell phones. And that includes in the classroom. So having conversations with our students, with our children about cell phone usage is important. And it also allows other students who may not have access to laptops or computers at home to be able to use that device in the classroom, gain support from their teachers as well as their peers to actually understand the topic or the subject that they're actually talking about during that lesson plan.
Thank you, Lisa.
Yes, I agree with what's been said already. I do support cell phones, laptops, iPads being used in the classroom. My children have found it very useful. My oldest daughter, she was in the French immersion program probably 8 years ago now, and they all had iPads in the classroom at that time, and it really piqued her interest in learning more. My grade 8 son now, he's getting his block orders from Lord Tweedsmuir. The parents, the teachers are communicating to the kids via Teams, as we've seen over the last couple of years in COVID. And I think we need to prepare the kids to be using those digital resources. As Sunny said, definitely, I think they also need to be taught the timing and that they need to focus on, the lessons at certain times also, but I do think it's a good resource that we should continue to use.
Thank you.
Okay, so my turn. Not that I disagree with anything that's being said, but the classroom and the classroom environment is in control with the teacher. I've been on the Development Faculty Association, no post-secondary education, but similar collective agreements where the teacher gets to control their learning environment. And if we were going to create a policy, we'd probably have to work very closely with the Surrey Teachers Association, the union that all the teachers belong to. Cell phones, like everybody has said, have been a great learning device in our classrooms. We can ask students to look things up, etc. But if we do find there are difficulties, then the teacher needs to talk with that particular student. And if it's a classroom issue, then the class needs to discuss it. And we have to role model. How do you deal with conflict? So to me, it would depend on the teacher, but if the teacher needed support because the students weren't paying attention, then we need to provide them the support so that the cell phones don't get in the way.
Thank you.
Thank you. So there is a difference between a cell phone policy, a no cell phone policy, and a strict cell phone policy. And I think a lot of teachers in the classroom have some type of policy that they've ensured. Coming through the last 3 years with COVID and blended learning, we have really learned what an asset it is to use some type of a phone or electronic device, not just for emergencies for children, learning and research. So in the last 14 years as a trustee, I've served 4 of those as chair. And I can say that I have not received one complaint or issue from a parent over the use of a cell phone or a teacher. So in saying that, if it were to become evident that we needed to have a policy, we would refer it then to the policy department and committee to develop a policy. Thank you.
So I agree with the rest of the group. I don't see any reason why we should stop kids to not have the cell phones in class. Yes, as Dr. Bloom said, the teacher has full control over the classroom. So teachers in today's day, they do tell the students to keep the phones on silent and only use for educational purposes only, and not for personal use or not for social media, stuff like that. Students use these devices as learning tools, and that's very evident from what we hear from teachers. So I think it is important to let students use it if it's used as a learning tool and not misused. We have seen a student success rate has gone up in Surrey in the last number of years. So it is evident that these devices are making difference in a student success rate. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would not be in favor of major restrictions of the cell phones in classrooms. My experience in the school board has shown me that technology is a big part of young children's learning. And by and large, I mean, classroom management is in control of the teacher. And if it was shown that use of cell phones in schools or in their classroom was a major distraction, they would be able to manage that. And if it was more of a larger, greater problem throughout the district, then as candidate Larson mentioned, we would refer that to the policy committee and design a policy that fit better, still allowed the use of technology in classrooms, but did it in a way that did not diminish the learning outcomes for students.
Thank you. Next round of questioning, we'll start with Gary. This question is about new schools. When new Surrey schools are open, there are often portable classrooms sitting in the parking lots. Why do we continue to spend millions of dollars every year moving portables around instead of building schools big enough to meet our present and future needs? I would just add to that. Do you, if you have a solution, or what would your idea be to solve one of those problems? Thank you.
It's a challenge for sure. When we build schools, it's in conjunction with the data received from the city of Surrey in terms of growth projections, so we know where to put a school and how large to make it. The district and the city has been growing incredibly fast. So yes, sometimes we do open a school and we immediately have portables on site. It's not something that is an exact science. The numbers fluctuate depending on what's happening at the city level in terms of where new developments are going in, how many new residents are moving into those areas, and not only new residents, but what proportion of those residents have school-age children. So it's challenging for us to determine the size of the school. One could argue that we need more schools, that we would agree with that. And the funding comes from the province of BC through the Ministry of Education and Childcare, and obviously through the province's general revenues. So we have a lot of work to do in terms of our advocacy, and we certainly have been doing a lot of advocacy, and that's why we opened 6 new schools in the last term. So lots of work to do, but lots has been done.
Thank you. Sunny?
Thank you. So there's a few things here. As Gary mentioned, we don't have enough data in terms of how many students will actually be attending those specific schools, which is why we always end up with portables. Portables are not new. They've been around since I was in high school, so over 20 years ago. So that's one area we need actual good data to really give us a good indicator of how many students are going to be filling the space. But one area that is kind of being overlooked here is when we're looking at catchment areas and we look at the rankings of schools. So a lot of parents that I've heard from directly, so parents whose schools are overpopulated are telling me, well, there's a lot of students coming here that don't live in the catchment, or sorry, a lot of students that don't live in that area. The parents are finding it was for them to enter into the school. And this is related to the way that we're ranking the schools. So parents want to put their kids in the higher areas. So this creates overpopulation in some schools, maybe more than others.
Thank you.
Yeah, at the school board meeting last month, after they resumed from the summer, the superintendent mentioned that the numbers are higher than projected. And I think this is the issue that we continue to have each year, is that the city is growing at a much faster rate than we're preparing for. So in my role as a project manager, I plan and develop project ideas, create and lead teams, monitor the progress of a project and set deadlines, solve issues that arise, manage money, ensure the stakeholder satisfaction, and then evaluate project performance. And I think that these would be added values to the board because these issues aren't new. We've been dealing with these portables since I graduated in 2000, and we need to be planning for the growth at a much larger rate. Thank you.
So I think this is a really good question. Portables themselves are not a problem always. They can be with ventilation or temperature, those types of things. But the real problem is the money that goes into them to maintain them, to move them around. So what we need to do is get really good data. I mean, I'm a researcher, and when I look at the statistics that come out, whether they're coming out from the school board or the city, they're all different. And until we have a really good handle on what the actual projections are, it's really difficult to come up with the exact number of schools that we need. So that would be number one. The second is that we can build modular schools. If we find out there's over enrollment in one area, we could have our schools where we can come and just attach a classroom to them. Those are possibilities that exist in other jurisdictions around the world. Also, we need a 10-year plan. We need a long-term plan and not be always running behind, which is what happens quite often. We need to work more closely with the city of Surrey and the school board to know where the developments are occurring so that we can plan for it properly. And of course, we need to lobby for more funding because there just isn't enough for a growing city.
Thank you. Lori?
So prior to this government, there was a general rule that until a school was at 110% capacity, the ministry would not even look at building a new school. Fortunately for Surrey, that rule has been changed a bit. We meet 2 or 3 times a year with Mayor and Council, the Ministry of Education, and the board and district staff, go over the NCP project. And in that time, probably about 8 years ago, we established a capital project office. And this office is the one that generates discussion between the city of Surrey and the district on where schools need to be built. The problem is we do not, the city will tell us where a school needs to be in their concept. Sometimes there isn't land available, and also then we need to go to the ministry and ask that they can purchase this land, and lots of times it isn't an easy-going thing. As far as projecting, we do have a 5-year, 10-year, and a 20-year capital plan on where schools need to be replaced. All I can say is that we've done a lot of funding, a lot of liaison meetings, and thank you.
Thank you, Gary.
When I was sitting outside the school district, I was always thinking why we cannot do anything about these portables. And when it came into the system, then you realize how hard it is. That's how this current government, they announced 6 years back that they are going to get rid of all the portables in Surrey in the next 4 years. And look what happened. It was 250 portables when the current provincial government came into power. Today we are at 350 portables. It's not that simple. Our demand to get rid of these portables is $2 billion. The Ministry of Education's annual budget for capital investment is $1 billion for the entire province. So we are asking $2 billion just for Surrey. So it's not that simple for any government to give that kind of money to any city, specifically Surrey, but we've been advocating and we were grateful enough to the current provincial government that they gave us the money that was never given to Surrey before. So thank you.
Thank you, Sean.
Thank you. You know, I mean, my experience at the school board has shown clearly that the population growth is just too great for the amount of infrastructure that's been prepared for citizens. It's sad that there's new schools opening and portals on it, but a lot of that is because of the direction of the Ministry of Education. And so the actual population compared to what was projected is really the main problem and why portables show up on new schools like the Hill. However, I believe that in going forward with our capital project office that and the collaboration with the ministry and with the city of Surrey Mayor and Council, I believe that the problem will be solved and we'll be able to build schools and you won't necessarily see portables on school sites.
Thank you, Bob.
So it's a very good question. And certainly the idea of moving portables costing millions of dollars is a big concern for us. We've advocated for many times. Where that's coming from is coming straight from the classrooms. It's very frustrating. It's a problem not only Surrey has. It used to be almost a Surrey only problem, but many other districts and provinces are growing very rapidly now, some even approaching our rate of growth in percentage terms. So BCSTA, the BC School Trustee Association, our board were able to meet with ministry staff last week, and I posed this very question to them of why it is there seems to be this, not policy, but this procedure that schools aren't built until the need is already there and then some. And so then the result is they say you need a school this big, and we know the school needs to be bigger than that, but that's what they will fund because they get that fund from Treasury Board, and that's what they say they can add. You can fund for this many because there's a concern, I suppose, about growth not coming through in the area and then them getting caught short. We certainly advocate for this. It's a big problem for us that we need to have those schools built, projecting farther into the future. We give them those numbers, but sometimes the funding just isn't there.
Thank you. Next question, we'll start with Sunny. Our school district could save millions of dollars by giving incentives for teachers to not take the full 15 sick days they're eligible for. Will you support doing this as other districts have if you're elected? And I'd like to add to that, what kind of incentives would you offer if you would support that?
Sorry, can you repeat the question? I didn't get the list ahead of time.
Yeah, no problem. Our school district could save millions of dollars by giving incentives for teachers to not take the full 15 sick days they're eligible for every year. Will you support doing this as other districts have if you were elected? And I added to that, if you do support that, what kind of incentives would you?
I don't know if I would support that right now, just based on the question alone, with not enough data, I would say no, the way it's been phrased. I think student or teachers should have those sick days, and if they want to utilize them, they should. They shouldn't try to hold back on using those to save money. Our teachers need to be more valued. They're not valued enough. And if they need to take a sick day, they should have to. They shouldn't feel like they need to be saving money because we're all entitled to those days. So no, I wouldn't support that at all at this point.
Thank you. Lisa?
Yeah, I agree with Sunny in the comment that we're entrusting our children with the teachers, and frankly, I don't think teachers make nearly as much as they should. It makes me very sad that we live in a first world country where teachers are not paid a much higher wage. And I know that a lot of that comes in regards to unions and bargaining, and these teachers care for our kids every single day. And I think if they need to take a sick day, they need to take a sick day. And I am thankful in the last couple of years during COVID that it's now a lot more accepted to say I'm sick, I can't come into work. Before then, even in my industry, I was always worried about if someone would fill in for my role, but I think we're starting to take our health a lot more seriously. So I definitely think they should get the days they're entitled to.
Thank you. Elvira?
Yeah, built into that question is the assumption that teachers are taking sick days when they're not sick. And I don't think we should be making those kind of assumptions. I would like to see hard data that says the individual is not sick, but is phoning in sick, because we don't want anyone coming sick to school. I'm not sick, but anyways, my voice is going. So what we need to do is ensure that we are providing the sick time that is needed. And if it's not needed, negotiating with the teachers to see what we can do differently. We need healthy teachers, whether they're mentally or physically. And we know that a lot of our community has suffered trauma. That's a lot of my research area, 1/3 of our population, which tells me that teachers have also been traumatized. So it may not be physical health, it may be mental health, and they may appear healthy but are not. So I think they're good professionals that can, know when they need to take sick days. Thank you.
Thanks, Lori.
So I think that 15 days that teachers are eligible for are well-earned sick days. They're part of that in local bargaining. Other ways around that, I think their local bargaining could say some percentage, maybe of retirement of unused sick days, because it can be accumulated. It could be them using some of their sick days for personal days, or if they used up all their family days for spending with their family. But this really is a local bargaining issue. And as far as the trustee, I feel that if the teacher is ill, they need to use those days. And whether it's mental well-being, emotional well-being, or to spend with their child, if their child is sick, those are the options that they need to have. And giving some type of incentive, I think if they're sick, and they need to have those days available to them. And they never know when they get closer to retirement age, if they are going to come, down, they could fall, break a hip, have some type of illness or cancer, they will need those days. So if they don't use them, they just stay there until they do. So thank you.
Thank you.
So when the ministry announced 5 days of sick leave, our treasury department, they projected that it's going to cost Surrey School District $1.5 million in addition. So it is a cost to the school district. If that funding is not allocated or not topped up on top of our operating grants, it is additional cost to the district. So that means we are pulling that money out of classrooms where that money could have been used on students. So what needs to be done is the collective agreement that the ministry has with the STA that needs to be improved. Teachers need to be paid more in terms of salaries rather than the sick leave. So I think the salaries needs to be looked after, and they need to make better agreements to pay our teachers much better than what they deserve. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, I mean, I've been abundantly aware over the years of what I would consider the big problem of abuse of sick days. We know that there are some people in a large organization like Surrey that might have chronic health problems and would need more than 15 days in a year. And there's probably lots of people in our school district that are very healthy and may only require, a few days. My preference would be, rather than just like a straight hard cap number, is to reward teachers with some kind of bonus, either through economic money compensation or tacked on to early retirement of some kind of system that rewarded them for not taking sick days. And I think that might be a solution that I could look at. Thank you.
Thank you. Bob?
Yeah, I would agree with Dr. Berman made a very good point. I think this question starts with a pretty large assumption that I don't agree with. I don't think the data supports the fact that we could save millions of dollars. I think there's an assumption there of what those more sick days being taken than are. We have looked into absenteeism. There are sometimes problems. There are certainly going to be, as it's been mentioned, once in a while, any large organization, some problems with that. But I think the benefit of having employees treated well and having sick days they need far outweighs that. I'll give my own firsthand experience. My wife, who's been teaching for 25 years in Surrey, has well over 100 sick days right now, and she fully expects she'll retire in a few years with well over 100 sick days that she will never use, she will not get paid out for, and I suspect she is the majority of teachers. There will always be a few outliers people hear about and get outraged about this one person that used all these sick days, and that is going to happen now. But I think for the large part, this is not a problem for Surrey. We always look at our numbers on absenteeism, and we ensure that everybody's getting good value for the tax dollars.
Thank you, Gary.
Thank you. Well, first and foremost, we have to have respect for the collective agreement, and in the agreement, there is time available for teachers to take when they are sick. We shouldn't monkey around with that, try and undermine that in any way, shape, or form. One of the few things I think that COVID taught us over the last few years is that when you are sick, stay home, and we need to make sure that's the case. Otherwise, colds or flus or COVID, whatever the case may be, starts to spread, and that creates an even bigger problem, especially when you've got a classroom of 25 to 30 kids and working in an environment of a school with many more children, and of course, a number of staff. So we've got to be able to let people, our staff, take their sick days when in fact they need them. And so therefore, I don't support any sort of incentive plan whatsoever to try to reduce the amount of sick days being utilized.
Thank you. Next question, we will start with Lisa. There's been a sharp decline in teacher participation in extracurricular activities in our district in the last 10 years. This directly impacts Surrey students. If you're elected to the Surrey School Board, will you support providing either an honorarium, some form of overtime compensation, or increased preparation time for teachers who are coaching students, giving up their own holidays to take students on extended field trips or undertaking other major commitments?
Yeah, it's a hard question because I think at the end of the day, when we all go to our jobs, we want to go home. And I want to respect the teachers that want to be able to say no, not because they don't want to be involved, but because they have other obligations. At the Lord Tweed's Mirror Parent Advisory Committee the other night, they were saying they're not going to do a volleyball team, which my son was really excited to be joining this year because they won't let a parent staff come unless there's a staff coach assigned to it. So, it's unfortunate that the children are suffering because we can't bring in outside people, outside coaches or even parents that may be coaches in the community without having a staff assigned to it. So I don't know that the district has extra money to be able to pay those things. I think it'd be better to look at other resources and see if we can let them help.
Okay, so when we're talking about teachers that are doing extra, basically, I consider that volunteerism. And volunteerism is on the decline everywhere. It doesn't matter what organization you look at. I run a nonprofit, the Network to Eliminate Violence in Relationships, and we find the same thing. So it's teaching the importance of volunteering in our society, starting in kindergarten, would be one way to do it. The other would be to involve other organizations. Maybe it's sports club that need to be involved, or I don't know, whatever we're talking about. If it's a chess club, maybe there's a chess master out there who wouldn't mind volunteering. But if the teachers are looking at that as part of their job, then it would go through the collective agreement to negotiate what that would be worth. But at present, it's seen as volunteer work. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I do agree that it is volunteer work, falls under that definition of volunteering. Giving an honorarium or some other form of overtime compensation or increased prep time for teachers is something that is a bargaining issue. It's not something that trustees have control over, but it's also some of the local bargaining issues that they can bargain with the employer with. So at this time, I would support a small honorarium to cover costs, and that could be done in our policy committee. But as far as the prep time and overtime, that has to be negotiated, and unfortunately falls outside the parameters of what a trustee can do. Thank you.
Yeah, I just echo to what Chairperson Larson said, that it's all about the collective agreement we have with the teachers and the sports staff. So that collective agreement bargaining table needs to look at it seriously and see what options are available there. But on the other side, I think the non-profit organizations, charities can play a vital role in this. The parents can play important role. I know lots of parents, they try to keep their kids busy in different kind of sports and cultural activities. But again, there are lots of non-profit organizations who can play an important role, can maybe take over 1 or 2 schools in their region or in their area and try to motivate students to take parts in different sports. So that's what. Thank you.
So I think I could consider some form of compensation for folks that engage students in extracurricular activities. Hard question is, where does the money come from? If it was shown to me clearly that that students' activities were curtailed to a great extent because of lack of participation by teachers or others in the school district through volunteering, then certainly I might look at some way to engage a community partnership in some way to generate funds to support. And students' families would probably be involved in some of those types of partnerships. So yes, to some kind of compensation and methods to do it, community partnership.
Thank you. Paul?
Yeah, it's certainly a challenge. I don't know if it's been a sharp decline so much, it's really a gradual decline of volunteerism, but I am worried coming out of COVID, this decline will be sharper. And I certainly saw it as a parent when involved in PACs and DPAC, that parent involvement has dropped off over the years as well. It's a challenge. But as Chairperson Larson has mentioned, this is a collective agreement issue as well. So that really makes it a tricky issue. We do have positions. There are helping teachers, PE helping teachers. There are athletic directors where there are some positions that are able to help with this, but that certainly does not come close to covering all the extracurricular, the after hours. I think we need to do the best we can to encourage volunteerism, to support it. And one thing I would circle back to our last question, one great way we can help our teachers with other activities to make sure we support them wherever we can for things like sick days and other things they need time so they feel energized and able to volunteer and help and support our parents want to do the same thing.
Thank you.
First of all, just to circle back to the questions, do I support an honorarium or other some other form of compensation for this? The answer is no. And the reason being, much like has been already talked about, we have to, again, be mindful and respectful of the collective agreement. That's not something that is currently there. If that's something that is either the teachers, either locally or provincially want to bargain, then that's the place where they bargain that into their contract. The other thing is, frankly, we don't have the money in our budget. Our budget is spoken for as it is now. There's no additional money. There's no free money. There's no extra pot of money sitting there that would be available for us to be able to pay 2 teachers for doing this kind of essentially volunteerism. Again, to repeat what's been repeated or been mentioned before, is we just need to make sure that we encourage the volunteerism and make sure there's opportunities for teachers and parents, for that matter, to volunteer to take part in the extracurricular activities. And a good thing that goes a long way that's not always monetary is a good, pat on the back and a thank you for doing something. So that's something we can always do. And I know happens already with principals in our schools.
Thank you.
So I have a bit of a different perspective. So as a sociologist, part of my job is to look to see what's happening in our society. And I know there's a lot of talk about encouraging volunteerism, but teachers already work outside of the classroom a lot. They're marking, they're trying to organize things for their classrooms, for their students. I have teachers constantly looking to they're sometimes asking for donations for students who maybe live below the poverty line. So to encourage that, I think is very difficult. And on top of that, we also have to look at the society we live in today. Most of us are struggling just to survive. So to ask for more time but not compensate that, I think is unfair. So I think that is something that we would have to evaluate. Is it in the scope of a trustee? No, but it is something that we can talk about and we can encourage, opposed to looking at how we can support teachers and actually show that they are valued, and if that's monetarily.
Thank you. Next question, we'll start with Belbeer. The district is tasked with reducing emissions by 40% by 2030, according to targets set by the province. To achieve these goals, we need investment to retrofit schools, but run into the challenge of limited capital funding. How would you tackle this problem?
Okay, thank you. Money is always an issue in our growing district. To me, we need to have better lobbying efforts. I have lots of experience lobbying all levels of government across ministries and have been successful. So that would be number one. Lobbying is not just meeting 3 times a year, but it is constant with the MLAs that exist. And I teach top community change and I do community change. So that would be one place to start. The other is to look at our business partners, whether we're talking solar energy, wind, to see if they would partner with us where we could have some kind of program where the cost savings could go to pay for the retrofits that we need. There are a lot of businesses out there that would be willing to help. There are other nonprofits who can do various things. So we have to think outside the box and be more creative. And I don't see the current board doing that. While they talk about the partnership that's coming with MCFD. Well, I've been working with 7 ministries for 12 years. And you need everybody, and the future of our kids is at stake. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori.
So we do lobby with our MLAs, our MPs, the ministry, and with parents, especially with schools being built. Unfortunately, the ministry gives us X amount of dollars for X amount of students that are going to school. We try to go under the gold standard or the minimum, at least the LEED standard for schools. And the LEED standard is the framework for healthy and highly efficient and cost savings green buildings. We've been fortunate to have some of our newer schools fall under that category. In the summer, we had quite a few schools that were retrofitted with the HVAC systems, trying to bring them more efficient. We also have a whole department that's all they do is with our carbon footprint. And that's balancing between emitting carbon and absorbing carbon. And we get carbon credits or we pay for those. We don't have the credits. So our whole department that we have is just working on that, and we'll continue to work on that. There is a combination of just looking at new ideas, and it is solar panels, it's geothermal, any type of those things we've asked the department to look at. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary.
Yeah, I know it's a big target that we set up that reduce the emission by 40% by 2030, but together we can. It's just if we get enough resources from the provincial government. So again, it comes down to money. We are lucky enough to be one of the greenest employer in the province of BC for a couple of years now, because of the efforts that Surrey School District is making to enhance our ventilation systems and our HVAC systems in the existing schools, and building the new schools as per the new codes where we use maximum of the solar energy, whether it's in terms of direct sunlight or solar panels, and try to mitigate as much as we can when it comes to emission. Thank you.
Yeah, these targets that are established are certainly a concern for the board. Over the past few years, we have been able to retrofit some schools. We have some very old buildings in Surrey, and there's a lot of new schools that have been built. I think that I would advise the board to advocate in a stronger way for government support in light of the kinds of targets that have been established. We will just do the best we can with what we have, and hopefully government would support us. Thank you.
So if you think about, we're all trying to reduce our carbon footprint. Now think about doing a district that is growing at a rapid rate every single year, and yet that is what Surrey has been doing. We'd like to do it faster, certainly. We have a couple electric buses in business this year that will greatly reduce things. At Tataloo, or one of our newer elementary schools, we actually asked for net zero funding on that school. Unfortunately, we were not able to get net zero, but we got it to net zero ready, which means it's that much closer, takes that much less money to get us there. We advocate with government to get us to net zero on all of our new schools. We're fortunate here in Surrey. Retrofitting is an important part, but also the fortune is, if we're building so many new schools, we can build them that way from the ground up, but we need that funding to be there. We need to continue to advocate, and we will. And I would just to add to Trustee Sen's point about us being a green employer, I would also add, though, not just lucky, but also the hard work of our great staff and support of this board is how that has happened.
Thank you.
Yeah, so the question is about the reduction. And we do support the 40% reduction by 2030 set by the province and even the federal government as well. But as when we got the report to the board actually in the last year, and I remember speaking to this, saying exactly what we're saying here, is that if it's a goal, and we do appreciate that it's important, but if it's a goal that's pushed down from higher levels of government, then higher levels of government need to fund that. And unfortunately, they're not able to, I don't believe at this point in time, to be able to achieve that by 2030. They're going to have to cough up more money. And that comes back to us as a board, make sure that we are putting that message forward to our representatives in Victoria, being our MLAs, and again, through discussions with the Minister of Education and Childcare and MP, city, everybody, and making sure they know that as well. We're all in the same boat. And as mentioned earlier, there's only so much money. We do what we can with what we get. And we are recognized as a green employer. And as Bob mentioned, we're very proud of the fact that we just put 2 electric buses on the road for the last month or so.
Thank you.
So I think actually the current board, in terms of this question, they've done their best with what they can. So kind of what Gary mentioned, there is only a certain amount of money, and there's a lot of different issues that are impacting our schools and our educational environment. So the best we can do in order to achieve this target, which is a big goal, whether it's achievable, we can hope. But I think here the main thing we can do right now is just more advocacy and requesting more funding so we can work with our schools and we can focus on achieving that goal of 40% by 2030. Whether we achieve it or not, I do think collectively within today's society that is something that we're all very much aware of, and we are actively trying to make those changes in very small ways or sometimes in very big ways.
Thank you.
Yeah, when I went to the school board meeting last month, I was very impressed with the presentation of the renovations and upgrades that were done over the summer. And also the new schools that were opening this fall have a very green thumbprint on them and are headed in that direction. But I have to agree with Sean and Gary. I don't think the targets are realistic. I think that it's good to have a good goal, something that we're striving towards in order to meet something and make progress in it. But I think this all costs money, and if the provincial and federal government would like us to have this target, then they need to provide the funding in order for that to happen.
Thank you. Next question, we'll start with Lori. Starting wages for new teachers are higher in other provinces with a much lower cost of living. What would you do to attract and retain teachers to Surrey?
So this is an ongoing issue, not just with our districts, but all districts across the province is trying to recruit and retain teachers. One way this can be done is surveying the teachers when they exit to find out what are the reasons that you've left. And lots of times it isn't money, it has to do with other incentives or other things that they have. Trying to reduce the class size is one of the things that we've tried to do. There's also incentives that we found out through COVID that can be done. It can be a blended work week. We did find through blended learning, the teachers and the students all sort of progressed just like they were in the classroom. There were some emotional and social issues that we had to deal with. But I think sometimes some of the teaching positions and the work can be done at home or can be done online. And I think we need to look at that, a 4-day week or doing different sort of ways of giving time off for our teachers. They could put hours in longer days doing other things, and would be incentives for them to spend more days off with their family or their partners. Thank you.
Again, that's a collective agreement bargaining issue, but I totally agree that teachers are not paid enough. We have to look at other provinces. Yes, class size composition is a major factor, I think we have the smallest class size in the entire country, if I'm not wrong, with 28 students capped by the Supreme Court of Canada, where in other provinces, such as Manitoba, Alberta, there are students, up to 40 students in one classroom. So we have smaller class sizes, but at the same time, I don't think that our salaries are good enough for all the work that our teachers are doing. So that collective agreement needs to be relooked at very seriously. Thank you.
Thank you.
The first thing that I would like to see a real direct comparison of teachers' wages across the country and from different provinces, and then look at what other benefits that we might be offering to offset some of that. If it was determined that there's a large discrepancy between what our teachers are paid and the benefits that they get compared to other provinces, I would certainly want to engage in a deep discussion of what strategies could be employed, perhaps more professional development, extra time off, some kind of compensation that would hopefully retain the teachers to stay here. But I agree, our cost of living is pretty steep, and it's a serious question for the board.
Bob?
So I would say for my role on the BC School Trustee Association, recruitment or retention is definitely a problem all around the province. Probably more so in Royal Racing here, but it is a problem everywhere. When it comes to recruitment, we do a lot of work. Our HR department does a lot of great work going to different job fairs, different possibilities where teachers are trained, even going across the country to recruit teachers from elsewhere, and they do a fantastic job of that. I think the best way we can do to recruit and to retain our teachers is to provide a great working environment, to be a great employer, to be a top employer as we are, to offer what our teachers need, support they need, offer the sick time they need, to make sure they have everything they need to keep teaching, to teach well into their careers, and not want to retire early or to move on to other jobs. If they want to retire early, that's great. But if we can offer them incentive that they might want to keep working because they love their job here so much, we need to do all that we can to do that. I believe we do a great job of that already, and we hope to continue that.
Thank you.
As previously mentioned, the actual salary component is obviously something that belongs to the collective agreement of the bargaining. But in terms of what can we do to attract and retain teachers to Surrey, and in my experience of business, in my long career as a senior manager, the number one reason why people leave is usually because of their manager, and they don't like them working for that particular manager. So we've built a culture at our Surrey School District where our managers, essentially our principals and our department heads, are in fact creating environments where people want to be able to work in Surrey. And we're proving that people are applying, coming from other districts around the Lower Mainland. And once they get here, they love it, and they like it because they're given that opportunity to do different things, to be able to create a new program or to manage a new program. I was just talking to a teacher last week, and he is absolutely amazed at what he's been able to achieve in the school that he's at right now, because he doesn't feel micromanaged, and he feels like he can do the work that he's been trained to do and wants to be able to do for the students of Surrey.
Thank you, Sunny.
So I've said this a few times already, but I'm going to say it again. Our teachers are not valued in our society. Our teachers play an integral role in socializing and developing our children. So they need to be paid more. They need to be paid in a way that makes them want to come into that classroom and they want to stay into our school district. BC has one of the highest costs of living. Surrey is not in a city where it's easy to even find housing. So their teachers need to, their salaries need to reflect that. I say art because I'm a teacher as well. So I understand in order to be feel valued, yeah, you need a good environment. You spend more time at work than you do probably at home. So you need to have a good environment. That's regardless whether you're a teacher or not. But if you're not being paid what you think you deserve, then you're not going to want to be there regardless. If we want to retain teachers, if we want to keep them, we want them to serve in our district, and we need to pay them more.
Thank you. Lisa?
Yeah, as it was mentioned earlier, the salaries are negotiated through the union. I did like Laura's suggestion though of the initiative for the blended learning. One of the Surrey school values is tools for a digital age, and we've seen that over the last couple of years, more blended program. I do think that could be an initiative for teachers to come to our district. Another thing I think that would be really helpful, which again would come to hiring and just staffing, is more teachers' aides and more ELL workers, more counselors. I think the teachers they're faced with a lot of different, every child is different. And even at Lord Tweedsmuir, they have 355 people with special needs just in that one school. So our teachers are doing the best they can with the resources they have, but we need additional resources.
Thank you, Belvedere.
Thank you. Wages are just one part of retention. The other one is working environment. So wages, like it's already been said, would be through the collective agreement. And so whatever is negotiated would be wonderful. In terms of retention, we're looking at the work environment. And my doctoral dissertation is actually on the work environment on KPU, on our policies and practices that impact it. And so what we have to look at, what is the physical and social environment right now in our classrooms? We've got lots of special needs kids and other kids that are challenged and not enough support. So the teachers end up doing that work and then they get frustrated because they're not able to teach their classrooms. So we have to look at all those factors, but the step one is we need to do a social audit and see what's actually happening in the classrooms. Then we need to set targets with all our workers, all our staff in the system. And then we can see how we can improve it so that people actually want to continue to work in Surrey.
Thank you. Next question, we'll start with Gary Tin. If you're elected to the Surrey School Board, would you support a hot lunch program to improve learning outcomes for low-income Surrey students?
Absolutely. Very, very important. And thank you for that question. Very close to my heart, because I was part of the business development department in the Surrey School District where this program is funded from. And presently we are serving over 2,300 hot breakfast and lunch to our most vulnerable students. And I think that program needs to be expanded more. This year, we received an additional funding of $7.3 million from the provincial government to support that program. But I wonder if that funding will continue next year or not. If it's just one-time funding, we don't want to increase that program and then cut it short next year. So our business development department, where people donate money and that money is used for the hot lunch program, is doing their best to generate more funds, but I think more needs to be done. Thank you.
I would certainly echo what candidate Lynn has just offered. And I'm happy to note that our school district, through its business development, has generated plenty of funds to support the hot lunch program. It's very important. I've been in schools. I know the benefit of supporting students that are vulnerable. And so I would do as much as I can to generate the funds. And it is important to have ongoing funds that we can count on, and not just one time. Once you start throwing money at something and then it's taken away, then you're scrambling to find other ways to support programs like the hot lunch program. It's important, and I support it wholeheartedly.
Thank you. Bob?
Yeah, the answer to this is an obvious yes, because we are already doing it, have been for years, but that's not to say we can't do more of it, don't want to do more of it, we certainly do. What's come up a lot at this table so far has been around advocacy, and also this discussion around partnering up with business. And as has been discussed by previous speakers, we do a lot of that already. The business development department does a fantastic job getting millions of dollars for this program. As far as advocacy goes, this is something where we get some money from the province through community link funding. We as a board went down about 5 or 6 years ago downtown, met the minister, because the community link funding was not in Surrey's favor. We were getting very much less in other inner city districts, a lot of inner city students. We discussed that with them and got our funding increased increased significantly to a point where we're pretty much equitable with other districts like ours. Unfortunately, in the last few years, that has changed and we are back to a point where we are behind. And we will continue to make efforts to advocate to get ourselves back up where we were before to expand those programs.
Thank you.
This question is worded as if we don't do this, and as if you've already heard, we do in fact do this. And candidate Finn correctly mentioned that 2,300 students are presently served or were served over the last year at just about half of our schools. So we do have a robust meal program at our schools. And again, it's been a great appreciation to donors that are rounded up, if you will, or contacted through our business development department. And they do a tremendous job for us. They've been in existence for a number of years, and they make sure that not only their costs are covered, but then some. I will mention that due to the rising costs, we've all seen rapid inflation over the last 6 months or so, particularly. The cost of food and the cost of these meals has significantly risen. And therefore, the board has in fact allocated some of our funds to make sure that we will not reduce the number of meals that are being offered to low-income children who need it, to make sure they can have a successful day of learning.
Thank you.
I just want to add, I think the hot lunch program is not new, it's around when I was in school. So again, it's been around for over 20 years. And there's a lot of research that supports that we do provide programs like this. Food insecurity and not having healthy meals does impact the learning outcomes, but it also has a lot of social and behavioral components as well. So absolutely, I do support programs like this and continue to support this. I think we need to advocate for more, as other people have suggested, as the economy that we're living in today. I suspect the numbers that we're seeing at low income is only going to rise until we kind of tackle some other social issues that are happening in our communities. So absolutely, I think we need to advocate for more, and I would fully support this.
Thank you.
Yeah, so the business development team announced last month at the board meeting that they spent $720,000 on the meal program in Surrey last year. And that's just from the Surrey school board level. The provincial government also just announced 7.3 million funding for food security programs. And that money is now being dispersed through the schools. Schools in Surrey should receive those emails, and the PACs have been notifying families in the school that need those. So the meal programs are happening. As Councillor Tin mentioned, 2,300 students in the district receiving hot lunch, and there's also lots of nonprofit organizations that are working alongside the school district. There was just a webinar this week from Learners Need Lunch from the Single Mothers Association that are bringing more awareness. And I know the City Dream Center is also sending food home on the weekends for families that need it. So there are a lot of resources out there, and if elected, I want to continue to advocate for that.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's look at the hard facts. 1/3 of our children come to school without breakfast. How can our children learn if they don't have food? It's not just about a lunch program, it's about food security. And there is also stigma attached to kids who are in the lunch program. So we need to figure out a way where people don't feel like they're stigmatized, but they can get the meals that they need. There are a lot of agencies that are willing to work with schools, and I've talked to a few of them that I already work with. But as well, the Ministry of Social Development should be a partner at this table to make sure that families have food that is needed. And otherwise, our children cannot learn, and they need to be supported at every level, whether it's that food, with housing, whatever it needs to be for that particular child, because every child matters.
Thank you.
The majority of our funding for food programs come under community linked funding, which was established many, many years ago. And unfortunately, Surrey does not have its fair share percentage-wise for the population that we have, and it doesn't take into account the vast majority and the size that Surrey is. So our program covers breakfasts, it covers hot lunch, after school, and weekends. And even during COVID and lots of times during the summer, these programs continue because we do know that children need to eat, and lots of times there isn't food, especially when it comes closer to the end of the month. We're fortunate that we have a very active and very aggressive procurement department, and they write grants, they solicit businesses. We're fortunate to have community members, nonprofit agencies, and I have to give a shout out to the Surrey firefighters who really assist us in supporting a lot of the food that we have. And our hot lunch programs, just so people know, are not just for the inner schools, but throughout Surrey, because there is a need for it in all the communities of Surrey. So thank you.
Thank you. Next question, we'll start with Sean. This question makes the claim that vaping is a problem in high schools. I'm not sure that's the case, but you can correct me. So vaping is at epidemic levels in Surrey schools. Would you support removing exterior bathroom doors in secondary schools, provided that no one is able to see into the bathrooms? Currently, students just close the outside washroom doors, and schools do not have enough staffing to prevent vaping and even major acts of vandalism.
Vaping is a considerable concern for many school districts. And I'm very aware of that from past experience in the board. My personal preference would be that vaping was outlawed on school grounds. I'm not in favor of any kind of secure area where kids could vape. We went through this with smoking when my kids were in school. It's a problem, and so to answer the question, I'm not in favor of allowing specific areas for kids to vape in school grounds, period.
Thank you. Bob?
So to start, just to be clear, vaping isn't allowed, of course, and I know it's not what Trustee Wilson was saying otherwise, but I just want to make sure that was clear. If we're talking here about the school board imposing this, no, I'm definitely not in favor. What I'm in favor of what I am in favor of is us listening to our educational experts, our teachers, our principals, and find out what they need to assist this problem. The question you started with whether this really was a problem or not. I think it's a problem. I would suggest not an epidemic. I think that's a bit, perhaps, hopefully an exaggeration. I think you hear stories about this, they can quickly blow up, but it is definitely a problem. I'm not trying to minimize that. I think it's going to look a little different every school, depending on the facilities they have, depending on how big a problem is in a particular school, and what strategies they want to put into place. Every school is going to have different strategies around these issues and other issues. So we'll definitely support whatever our teams feel they need. And if this is one thing that they would need, I would support it, but definitely not some kind of a top-down imposement.
Thank you.
Thank you. Again, just to reiterate, we do have a policy that says that smoking, vaping, and cannabis consumption is prohibited on any of our school properties whatsoever. That was a policy change about 2 years ago. The question is about doors, removal of doors, I believe, and on new schools, we are in fact building them in such a way where the doors, you can't see it, but at least people can hear and smell, if that's the case of what's going on in the school. So new schools are being built that way to retrofit all of our existing 120 schools. Obviously, there's a big chunk of money involved in that, and we would probably look to do that over time, and or as Bob Holmes mentioned, is seek the input from the site-based administrators and teaching staff to see how big a problem it really is. The other thing I think that we need to do, and I know we are doing, is we always try the education point of view. There's obviously health hazards with smoking and vaping. I think we have to make sure that that's communicated and taught through the schools to the students.
Thank you. Sonia?
So I'm kind of reiterating what everyone else is saying. I don't know if vaping is an epidemic in the school level. Is it an issue in society? Absolutely. We saw the same thing with smoking. Historically, smoking is where you find the young students, particularly more in high school, I suspect anyways, where they might go to the bathroom to smoke a cigarette, or there might be a designated area on school grounds or off school grounds where they can smoke. But to answer the question, it's full, ask if we should remove exterior doors. No, I don't think we should. I think we need to educate our children. For me, as a sociologist, again, knowledge is power. So if we teach our students what is the effects of vaping, it's probably going to have more of a powerful effect opposed to trying to remove doors. This question's a little bit layered too, because they also throw in vandalism in there as well, that vandalism occurs in bathrooms. Yes, it does. Again, it comes down to education and teaching our children the cost of things and what are the effects when they smoke or they vandalize property.
Thank you. Lisa?
In regards to teenagers vaping in bathrooms, I used to smoke when I was a teenager, and there was a designated area at the schools, and I appreciate the Surrey School Board's policy on a no vaping, no smoking, no cannabis on the school properties. I think that's the best way to go. I think if someone is vaping in the bathroom, the issue is really respect of authority. And I think we need to educate the children better. And I think that the consequences need to be greater. I think rather than just sending them home for one day, it does need to affect their, it's hard because I don't want to say you can't come to school for a week, but I said this on an interview the other day. If I light up a cigarette in my job, I'm going to get fired. And I think we need to start giving kids the real world experience. If they're going to make these choices, there's going to be effects to that. And I'm not saying that we should be taking them out of school, so don't hear that, but I'm just saying we need to, more than one day, like they probably don't want to be at school anyway if they're smoking in the bathroom.
Thank you.
So when I've been talking to students and to parents, they're telling me vaping and drug use is a problem in the bathrooms. I heard one sad story from a mother who says her child is afraid to drink any water during the school day because she does not want to go into the bathroom. So that to me is a problem. It's a health and safety issue. And what I'm hearing is everybody just thinking of quick fixes. We need to look at the root causes. The root causes of vaping, smoking, drug use is all coping mechanisms with stress and trauma. So we need to get our counselors involved and see why are people vaping in the first place? What's going on, and let them figure out the solutions and then implement them. And to say, oh yeah, we'll just take off the doors. Well, maybe that's the solution at the end, but we need to figure out what are the root causes and work with the staff and the students, the counselors, etc., to figure out the best approach.
Thank you.
So yesterday I sat on a committee called Student Voice. It was over 50 students, mostly high school students that zoomed into this meeting. And the basis of this discussion yesterday was on health and wellness. And from listening to these grade 10 to 12 students and listening to the conversations that were going on in the chat rooms, vaping seems to be a small part of the problem. Most of these students are very well rounded. And as a trustee for the last 14 years, I've had very few calls and very few emails on vaping. There's so many other issues that take precedent over this, even though it is an important one. Taking the doors off certainly is the answer. As we can see, there's a washroom over there. You can build it so that it's open and still have privacy. But a lot of it is that parents need to know what their children are doing. They need to pay attention to their children. They need to, whether it's check their backpacks, things like this. But the problem of vandalism is, I think children need to be taught respect for their own personal property, their parents' property, and other people's property. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, yeah, I know it is an issue with not only Surrey, lots of school districts are facing this problem. And that's why I'm in huge favor of school resource officers. I think it is required that we have 2 uniform officers in every high school, 1 male, 1 female, 8 a.m. till 4 p.m. From the school starts to the school ends. 3 things it will do. One is it will motivate students to get into the uniform jobs, whether it's RCMP or police or army. Second, they'll keep an eye on the students inspect the washrooms on a regular basis. And third, it will keep the drug dealers and gangsters away from our school grounds. So I think the school resource officers, we have to think outside the box. We have tried everything that we could in the past. So school resource officers is one answer.
Thank you. We're almost out of time, so we'll give everyone 1 minute for closing remarks. And because we went left to right last time, we'll start with Sean and work our way back this time.
Okay, thank you. I opened by mentioning the effort that early in my career as a trustee, working toward building collaboration and respect for the school district. And over the years, I've continued to do that. And I'm happy to say that during my time in the last several years, the district has been recognized as one of BC's top employers. And I think that you really need that kind of respect for the system, for professional people, professional leadership, and a governing board that knows what its place is, and stays in the governing role and works with our superintendent to set the stage for the employee relationships that I think are important for any organization if it's expected to deliver public education to young students. Thank you.
Thank you. Gary?
So thank you all the attendees, first of all, to the media partners for this event, and thank you to the host one more time. I've been a trustee for the last 80 years. There's a lot to learn in this industry, and I think the experience does make a huge difference. The best part about our team is we go along very well. When we sit on the board table, we leave our political affiliations outside that room, and we just think about Surrey students, staff, and parents. So on October 15th, please do vote for me, Gary Thin, and my entire team of Surrey First Education, because we are passionate about Surrey students, staff, and parents. And we have good working relationship with all three levels of the government, and we will continue to advocate on behalf of the Surrey residents. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Lori?
Thank you for the chamber for hosting this. It was very much appreciated that the time change was done to accommodate our retirees. This board has been a leader in all things COVID and has been an example for other districts to follow in putting the safety and education of students and staff first. I am fortunate to work with a cohesive and progressive team who puts students first in every decision we make and will continue to do so if re-elected. Thank you, Surrey First Education.
Thank you. Belvedere?
So I know health and I know education. That's my entire background for my entire working life. I'm a researcher and I'm a community leader. I work on social issues consistently. I sit on national boards and I sit on local boards. I am a speaker at international conferences. I think I can bring all these expertise to make sure that we work towards the best school system in this province. Experience doesn't mean doing the same thing 100 times. It means if you do something differently each time. And I haven't seen that with the current board. So I think it's time for change. And I'm hoping that you will all vote for me, Dr. Belvedere, and Team Surrey Schools, so we can really address all these root causes, work on prevention, and build a sustainable system. Thank you.
Thank you. Lisa?
So I'm running on a team called Parents Voice BC. I'm running with Jupinder Kaur-Saran. She's the founder of One Voice Canada. Nasima Nasto, founder of Hamad Nasto Anti-Bullying Coalition, and Jasbir Narwal, who holds a Master's of Education and has many years of experience as an educator. We've all have lots of board experience and community experience. To get elected as a school trustee in Surrey, you need about 28,500 votes to get you in. And that's why we decided to come together as a group who has run before and has a variety of different experience. If you want to see the same of the last 8 to 12 years in Surrey, then elect the incumbents. But if you'd like to see a board that represents what your child's classroom looks like, please elect Parents Voice BC.
Thank you. Sunny?
I just want to, sorry. I had a 3-hour lecture before I came here, so I apologize. So I just want to start by saying thank you for this opportunity. I really appreciate it. As I mentioned to you all before, I'm a sociologist, and part of my research and work training includes 2 vital skills that will be an asset for me to be on this board. Number 1 is observation skills. I'm going to enter any environment, any space, and just through observation, see what resources are missing and look at accessibility issues. Number 2 is listening skills. I know you've heard a lot from us talking about who we are, what our experiences are, but being part of the board is also having these listening skills and being able to hear what the public, the students, the parents, the teachers are wanting us to hear in order to make a change to our educational system. So I have the skill set to take my experiences, my education, and be able to bring that into the board to make effective change. I also understand the school system. So as an educator, I think we need more educators on the board who actually understand what is happening in our schools and where we can make those effective, positive changes to see this inclusivity and accessibility.
Thank you. Gary?
Yes, thank you. Again, I would urge everybody to consider and take a look at our individual experience on our team, but also our collective experience. And Gary Finn touched on it. We are a great team. We work well together and we manage to get things done. And that track record speaks to that. If you look back over the last 4 years or even 8 years, particularly in the last 4 years, we've opened 6 new schools in the city of Surrey. We have opened or added 600 additional childcare spaces in our city, which is a very important thing for young families. And we have a very respectful relationship working with our 2 unions, being the Surrey Teachers Association and QB. And take a look at our student success. It has increased over the next 4 years. Then take a look at what we're talking about for the future. We're going to be building more schools, nearly $2 billion in requests for additional schools and or additions to existing schools. And we will continue with student success improvement. So look to the team with the experience, with the proven results, and a track record that we know will continue forward in the future with myself, Gary Timoshuk, and my colleagues, Surrey First Education.
Thank you. Rob?
So I'd like to start by thanking Scott and the Chamber of Commerce team, KPU, all of you for being here. All those of you who watch on video later, really appreciate this. We don't have enough of these events. Great to see some people here and some will be watching later. I've been a Surrey resident for over 30 years. My wife is a teacher here in Surrey. We both graduated from Surrey schools. Our kids graduated from Surrey schools. We know the community. My involvement in Surrey has been with PAC and DPAC for many years before I became a trustee as chair of DPAC at the end for a few years. We've got the experience in this team. We've had many accomplishments that have already if you've already been told, between the schools we've built, the childcare space, the leadership we've shown. We are the good team to continue on. We have the leadership, we have the experience. I ask you to support myself, Bob Holmes, and our Surrey First Education team in the election. Thank you.
All right, thanks everyone. Thanks for coming. Good luck to all the candidates. Scott Wheatley, the Executive Director of the Chamber, is going to provide the closing remarks.
Okay, thanks very much, Malin. You did an amazing job. I could never even try to do moderate as well as you did. Just want to thank everybody on behalf of the Chamber for coming today. I can't let you know how much respect I have for people that do run for public office. It's a tough job with no guarantee that you're going to get the job at the end of the day. I also want to thank everybody in the audience for coming today and supporting our candidates and learning as much as you can about the coming election. I also want to give a special thanks to KPU. Aside from providing this venue, they're our title sponsor for our Clovis Business Excellence Awards, and they're an amazing community organization, and we just enjoy working with them so very much. So anyway, I'm not sure, we've got a few minutes, we can stay in the room if anybody in the audience would like to have any specific questions for any of the candidates. If they can hang out for a few minutes, that would be great as well. Thank you very much.